Alright, hello. Okay, so today I thought there's a few things that potentially I want to share. There's something that is on my mind for a very long time, for the entire day really, which is on the concept of evil, which I'm thinking of sharing. But then again, ultimately, I think what I want to share today, or what I decided to share today, is going to be on the principle of attractions. So if you are looking in terms of, okay, how do I use psychology to attract somebody? How do I use psychology to increase my dating chances? In some sense, we can actually there's a discussion of whether or not there is it's manipulative for you to actually want to do it, but in any case, it's not up to me to actually judge what you do with the knowledge. In some sense, what I'm actually doing here is just reporting and teaching how things actually work. So attraction in itself, when it comes to psychology, just like any other aspect, if you are saying in terms of influence, it's quite vast. So there's also a lot of different resources for you to absorb. In some sense, you can say that there are some people who go through the direction of pickup artists. So they start to use those techniques taught by pickup artists to increase their chances of attracting a girl. Based on my evaluation, those techniques usually works on the principle of power. So how do you demonstrate power, right? Compared to influence. Influence is more of you give control to the other person, and then the person will more or less choose to do the things that you want to, provided that you do things correctly, right? And for influence, I cover it extensively under the two main principles that you only need when it comes down to influence, which is mirroring and sense of importance. So in any case, I know that there's a lot of different things that potentially I could cover when it comes to attraction, such as what is creepiness, why is it that some guys give off creepy vibes, how to use body language to attract somebody, then all of the above, right? What are the traits that is attractive? But in any case, today the only thing that I will be covering is on the basis of how people fall in love. So I'll go more into details of the perception. How do we perceive each other per se when it comes down to somebody that we are attracted to, etc., right? And if I have any additional time, because I do want to keep this within 30 minutes, if I have any additional time, then I'll actually touch on a little bit of if two person were to be attracted to each other, what is required, etc. So in any case, let me just change to my whiteboard. Okay, here we go. So today, how humans fall in love. There is few things that encompass this, but for me, if let's say I would just go straight to the point, the important thing to note whenever you are thinking of, okay, I want to attract this person, is this idea, alright? For human beings, okay, we fall in love with the illusion of the other person. So, I mean, there are other ways that people have described this before. They have described this in a way of we fall in love with the idea of the person, not with the person in itself, but ultimately it comes down to this principle, right? We fall in love with the illusion of the other person. So, what do I mean by this? Now, if we think in terms of a human being, regardless of who we are, we do not necessarily show who we truly are to people that we meet for the very first time. Make sense? So I think this is a Japanese concept. I can't really remember what it's called, but the idea is that according to this principle or concept, we have three faces. We have three faces, and the first face is the one that we show everybody. And you can say that this face is the one that is most tempered. It's something that is supposed to perceive us and show us in the best light. And then there is the face that we show our close peers, which, by the way, this also includes our family members. This is the face that we reveal to people that we truly trust. So it reveals a little bit about our value system, what is the thing that we like, what's the thing that we hate, what's the thing that we fear, etc., etc., right? So you can say that this is a little bit more genuine. And lastly, this is the face that you only show yourself. So within here is those secrets that you'll take to the grave, things that you are completely embarrassed about, and you'll basically never reveal to anybody, right? Even if to your significant other, so to speak. So the whole idea is that there's these three phases, and to a certain extent there's also multiple different concepts that describes this to a certain extent. When it comes down to Carl Jung psychology, by Carl Jung, Jungian psychology, there's the idea of the persona. So the persona is in some sense our public face, right? The face that we actually show ourselves. So why is it important that for us to know all these things, right? Well, how it relates to us falling in love is very simple. Most of the time when we meet somebody for the first time, you can say even concepts such as love at first sight is not truly about the person in itself, right? We fall in love with more or less the face and the illusion. And to a certain extent, I would say that in actual fact, what we're falling in love is not the person itself, but it's actually our own subconscious mind. So, why, in some sense, how does this relate to subconscious mind, right? The subconscious mind, or you can say that within you, within your mind, is almost as if you have a checklist that you cannot access, but it's a checklist that contains your preference when it comes down to your ideal significant other. However, when it comes down to this checklist, the reason why you are unable to access it, you are unable to tell any information about this list is because, well, is in your subconscious mind. If you are able to clearly identify the different traits that you desire, then it will cease to be a subconscious thought. It will actually be a conscious thoughts or idea, right? So within you, you can say that it lies the silhouette of your perfect significant other. This silhouette can embody, well, we wouldn't know what is the thing that we generally fall in love with, right? So how can we identify this ideal significant other? And how does this ideal significant other within our subconscious mind even ties into attraction, or when it comes down to falling in love with somebody, right? Based on my understanding, whenever we fall in love with a person, let's say for the first time, let's put some hair over here. What we're doing is, well, we don't in actual fact know who this person is, right? You can say that the only objective thing that we can identify about this person is one thing: their physical look. Their physical look, how they carry themselves, it clues us into an idea, but generally it seems as though they might as well be just a caricature of who they actually are, because you don't know anything about them. You may not even know their preference. You may not even know anything about them, right? Even if you know anything, it's more or less going to be something on surface level. So generally what we do is that we would imprint, so long as it's somebody that we feel like is attractive, what we tend to do is that we imprint the idea of our perfect significant other into them. So which means to say that if we like a significant other that tends to be a little bit kind and maybe a little bit intelligent, then you can say that when we fall in love with somebody, before we know more about them, this is the thing that we more or less assume a little bit about them, right? They more or less will be a little bit kind, maybe they're a little bit intelligent. If you like really intelligent girls or very intelligent guys, then I would say that you probably wouldn't assume the first person that you meet to be hyper intelligent. But then again, you can also say that if you notice that somebody happens to be hyper intelligent, which is one of the trait in your ideal significant other, you will immediately fill in the blanks with the person, right? So if let's say you fall in love with the person's intelligence, which is plausible, but most of the time is that we fall in love with the looks, we have to ensure that, okay, the looks don't have to be perfect, but it's more or less like acceptable enough. Then that's when all the other traits come in. Then with maybe 1, 2 or 3 ideal traits that we see, they are not a psycho, then that's when we more or less start to have a crush, develop a crush and we like them to a certain extent. So in some sense, when we paint this person with our subconscious, this person, or rather this illusion, right, whenever we think of this person in our mind, in actual fact what it actually is our subconscious wearing the mask of this person. So what are some examples that, or rather what are some things that you can notice that will reinforce this point, right, which is the thought that I have, or the version that I have about the particular person that I have a crush on is in actual fact my subconscious wearing the face of this person. Now, most of you, I'm pretty sure, if you ever fallen in love and everything like this, so long as you're thinking in context of having a crush, right? Likelihood, what have happened in the past is that you have had an imaginary interaction with your crush in your head. So be it's a imaginary conversation or it's a imaginary circumstances that is very unlikely to happen, but in general, I'll just put it as simply as your crush in your head, or the object of your affection or your infatuation has spoken to you in some ways inside your head. And the idea is that in this conversation, how did it actually go? Did it go in the sense of like, okay, I am going to say this in this imaginary conversation, then she is going to say this in this imaginary conversation, then I'm going to reply this in imaginary conversation? No. It didn't happen that way. What likely happened is that as if that interaction miraculously happened in itself, right? You only need to worry about what you say, and then as if the words that your ideal significant other would say is filled in, the blanks are filled in automatically, and your significant other inside your head is basically able to like say certain things or anything like this. Basically clues you in that, okay, it is not your conscious mind that decide what the fantasies in your head says to a certain extent. So if it's not your conscious mind deciding what this character in your head is saying, then where else could it come from other than our subconscious mind? So in actual fact, whenever we have an imaginary conversation inside our head, although what we more or less see or perceive, the character in it is the object of our infatuation. In actual fact, what we're basically doing is that we are talking to ourselves, so to speak. And I don't think that's a concept that is difficult to wrap your head around, right? Because if this thought comes externally, then you're basically schizophrenic, and you have other mental illnesses, right? So long as you're a normal human being who have at some point had an imaginary conversation with somebody, a character in your head, then yes, it stands to reason that obviously we are speaking to ourselves. So why is this important? Because in actual fact, the version that you fall in love with, you can say that like this is the girl in real life, and then this is the girl in my head. What you're falling in love with is not this. In actual fact, you're falling in love with this. And when two person interact with each other, what we are actually falling in love with is the idea of the other person, and vice versa. And once you realize that this is how it actually works, then you realize that, okay, in order for me to attract the other person, all I need to do is work the subconscious mind, right? There's no point that I review and I try to show off who I actually am. It's much easier for this person to create a fantasy about me instead of me actually trying to show this person who I actually am. Do you want to show who you actually as? Do you actually want to review and show who you actually are as a person? Yes, because keep in mind that the extreme end, right? So let's say you are just meeting this person for the first time, and let's say if you are thinking in terms of marrying this person in the future, then you can say that if let's say we assume that you're going to die at 80 years old, your age from now till 80 is how long that potentially you have to stick to this person. So which means to say that it's best, of course, to find somebody that truly genuinely like you. But the whole idea of how attraction actually works, just keep in mind that in actual fact, in our head, what we actually fall in love with the illusion. So now keep in mind this, by the way, this is also working on the same principle when it comes down to whenever people have those kind of fictional character crush. So this can be your books, your games, your anime characters, or it can be your K-pop biases. Then here's the part that you're like, wait, K-pop biases? What do you mean K-pop biases? They are real people, right? They are real people that I fall in love with. It is not the same as fictional character. I hate to tell you this, but it is exactly the same. The reason being is that the K-pop idol, keep in mind the thing that you know about them when it goes back to the three masks is their persona. It is not who they truly are as a person, right? It's who they want you to believe. Keep in mind, if you are somebody whose whole career and job is in the public sector, well, it seems so weird for me to put it this way, right? Because that term have multiple meaning. If your job is to be an entertainer and your public image is extremely important, do you think that there would be professional training for you to actually know how to carry yourself well? How not to act in a public space, how to actually ideally act to attract, then how you need to look like, everything, etc. So you can say that to a certain extent, they are putting up a performance, right? Yes, some of them could be a little bit more genuine, but the whole idea is that all you know is their persona, because keep in mind that if you yourself as a person interacting with another person, you are not going to reveal the face that you show your peers, because it's a little bit more embarrassing, right? We might say things that's a little bit weird and be perceived to be weird, and human beings, we don't really like to be perceived as weird, and we are not willing to show this to any member of public. How much more would a K-pop bias be not willing to show their genuine face, right? If you know what I mean. So you can say that K-pop idol, because they are trying to put on an illusion, they're putting on a character. This again, not only K-pop, right? You can say that your streamers or your online figure whatsoever, right? All falls under this category, right? Because this is, so long as we are talking in terms of infatuation, which is I have a vague idea of who you are as a person, not who you truly are as a person. I might know a little bit about your values, but I don't know you in person enough, and I don't really know the other side that you do not want to reveal, such as your insecurities, the thing that you're scared of, etc., right? Because of this, I will more or less only have a vague idea of who you are. And you can say that because of that, there's no difference between a fictional character and a K-pop bias in this sense, right? I'll even go as far to say that whenever two people, so let's say right now this is not two people interacting with each other, right? This is just you. Okay, this is you and this is your friend. And both of you like the same girl. This is the same girl. The version of the girl in my head is different from the version of the girl in his head. It can be very similar, but they'll never be the same, because again, what we're actually falling in love with is our own subconscious mind, right? And again, the interesting thing is that if you notice in any sort of internal interaction with your crush, right? The interaction that you have with them in your head, this person will never act outside the bounds of what you feel is acceptable. It's always the case, right? So this, you can say that this idea will never have any sort of red flags. It will have things that you feel like you can tolerate to a certain extent. In the imaginary conversation, it might even be a point of like, okay, it might be an argument, but it will never be the argument to the extreme. It will never insult you down to your insecurity that makes you hate them, right? So you can say that this is the most perfect, lovable version of them, the most efficient. Never never is this version of this person in our head ever going to do anything to offend us. And it will only do everything that we love. So again, the whole idea, because this is our ideal significant other, right? So when it comes to real life, because all I'm talking about right now is our subconscious mind, this is not how it works. Real life is a multiplayer game. Just because, well, I need a hair. So like, let's say, let's just put a red head over here. So life is a multiplayer game. We are not living with ourselves in our head. We actually have to interact with people in real life. So what happens when we progressively start to interact with the person? Well, you can say that because within the trait in my head is this ideal checklist of who this person is. However, as I progressively know this person, probably a certain trait will be revealed about her. So what happens if two traits were to be conflicting? So if I were to give an example, right? Imagine that you manage to go on a date with this girl. So now both of you are on a date. And the version of this girl in your head is gentle and kind and polite because this is the type of girl that you like. But when during the date itself, you realize that this girl is actually nasty to waiter and waitresses. She's generally nasty and rude to everybody. She chews off the waiter and waitress for no apparent reason. Then maybe to a certain extent she caused a little sin and makes you a little bit embarrassed. In that situation, what happened? Or what happens after that? Now, the version of her in your head, which is kind, and the real life version of her, which is rude, is now in direct confliction of each other. And provided that you are not a delusional person, likelihood what happens is that the true life things that you know about this person now fills in the blank and overwrites the version in your head. So keep in mind that the version in your head is your ideal significant other, being described to be 100% of at an attractive level, right? But keep in mind that one of the traits now have been overwritten and been filled in with something that you find, be it not that attractive, or in this case might be something that you actively hate. So because of this, you can say that in some sense, if let's say we have a pie chart, now we have a little bit of reality in here. And then the version that you have in their head is maybe like 95%, etc., or maybe even lower. So what does all this actually mean, right? What am I trying to get at? The more that we know about a person, the less we like them. Because the more that we know about them, the more that we'll find traits that will deviate from the ideal significant other. But of course, there's one important thing to take note, right? Because the whole idea is that, well, if let's say that's the case, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to find somebody that fits my fantasy 100% of the time. Extremely unlikely to happen. Because you can say that the version of the anybody in our head is going to be so perfect that it's almost next to impossible for anybody to truly fit our subconscious ideal significant other down to the T, right? So be a 100% match. If you are looking for 100% match, in my opinion, you are kind of delusional. You are very, very unlikely to happen. It's very unlikely for you to actually find this person. If you want to continue to try to find this person, well, I can't fault you as well, right? Because again, you do whatever you want with your life. But the whole idea is that once we realize that what we're actually falling in love with is the illusion of the person that we actually fall in love with instead of the actual person, and it's inevitable for them to not be a perfect mirror of our ideal significant other, then I would say that when it comes to attraction, what we more or less have to be wary about is tolerance, right? Tolerance. Yes, tolerance as in how much to actually how much you can actually endure from each other. But in this case, what I mean by tolerance is how much percentage of this person from your ideal significant are you able to accept. So you can say that if let's say you're desperate enough and this person is really so pretty, and by the way that is only a issue if you truly is infatuated with this person, which means to say that the illusion of her is so far from reality, right, that you are able to tolerate that. So if this person deviate 50% from your ideal significant other in your head, then you're still going to continue to like this person. But likelihood, I think that, I'm not sure about this, but I think most people's tolerance is about 70%. So even if there's 30% of the things that we notice about this person, then we more or less, we will still accept this person, right? We'll take it as that this is the person's quirk, right? I feel like I can tolerate this so long as you tolerate my quirks, because again, I'm not perfect. I can do weird things, I can do stupid things, I can be dumb, I can have weird habits, so long as you don't judge me for the 30%, then I won't judge you for the 30%. But the idea is, of course, that it comes down to a compromise, right? So in actual fact, in a very unromantic way, this is how I actually see relationship, which is the idea of so long as the version of this person don't deviate too much. Of course, 50% in my opinion is too much, right? Because you can say that this person is not even half of the person that you fall in love with. So now, this of course is me sharing about how all this concept works. How do I now utilize this when it comes to attraction? So now we're talking in terms a little bit of like influence, right? Influence, call it influence or manipulation in this case, whichever. The whole idea is, of course, this. Keep in mind, one of the reason why the mirroring and sense of important frameworks work so well is because you let the other person talk and you don't talk. What is the illusion? Because most people have this idea, right, that I must share all about my achievements. I must share my achievements, what makes me special, etc. with the other person, which, by the way, yes, you do have to reveal all these things to the person eventually, right? Like what I said, if you really were to marry this person, life is very long, it's 80 years. How long are you going to be stuck with this person? Unless you want to say that, like, I plan to have a divorce if anything don't turn out well, which, by the way, if let's say that's your view, I don't really think that you should get married. That defeats the whole point of marriage. But assuming that you're thinking in terms of, okay, I want to be in a long-term relationship with this person, then of course you need to at some point reveal who you truly are as a person. But the idea is, how fast do you want to reveal your cards, right? Do you want to just straight out cards on the table on the first date, or do you want to slowly dole them out over time? Different ethical consideration when it comes down to this. If you can say that, on one hand, if I were to show my hand on the first date that I meet this person, then we can make a decision of like whether or not we like each other right off the bat, right? If let's say you see a red flag here, then like let's not waste each other's time. But another consideration, you can also say that if let's say that's the case where we reveal our hand at the start of the interaction, then we put a overwhelming weightage on objective qualities. So which means to say that at any point, right, if I were to see that, okay, you are a red flag or anything, I'm not going to deal with you. So this is almost as if like it's online dating, right? And the reason why online dating is so different when it comes down to dating in real life is because when you are dating in real life, you are dating the actual person. So yes, sometimes you'll feel like, yeah, okay, this person have a little bit of the quirk, but maybe it's a minor thing, I feel like it's okay, right? So be it. This person chills with the mouth open. Yeah, but she's still cute, right? She's still intelligent. What is the chances of me finding someone who's cute and intelligent compared to like that doesn't chill with her mouth open, right? Maybe it's even harder, and it's even rare to find somebody who is cute and intelligent anyway. So what if she chills with her mouth open, right? So be it. So the idea is acceptability, right? But I'm pretty sure that I already forgot my original point, when I ranted on that thing. There's a weakness of me. I tend to forget the points that I want to say. But anyway, this is close to 30 minutes, so I also need to wrap this up very, very quickly. Hopefully, if let's say the point is important, then I'll probably like come back and revisit this. If not, then it's gonna be in the comments, unfortunately, right? Because I do all these things from scratch and on the fly, so to speak. Okay, so going back to the idea of using this in attraction. So I want to actually use this to attract the other person. Yeah, by the way, I was saying something about like showing hand and everything. Ethical consideration. I probably should wrap up that one first, right? The ethical consideration. But in any case, like if let's say it's online dating, then you can say that because of some small minor things we see before we meet the person, then we can just say that like, well, I'll just swipe and find another one. Why would I want to settle for anybody that's less than perfect? Which I don't think that's how love or affection or relationship should actually be, right? It should be a certain level of tolerance from each other, because you can say that if both of you are perfect for each other, then there's nothing to actually learn from a relationship. You can say that potentially your differences is what's going to help you grow together. Of course, what brings you together is your similarity, but the areas that you potentially can grow would be your differences. So in any case, like, that's that point settled already. So let's just continue with the point where how to actually use this in dating, right? The whole idea is this: the reason why mirroring and sense of importance work when it comes down to attraction is because you reveal so little about yourself at the start. So going back to what I mentioned, the more that you reveal about yourself, if there's any sort of conflicting trait, it will override the trait inside the person's head. So if let's say the person hypothetically, right, the person she doesn't like anybody who smokes, and you happen to be a smoker, then you can say that in that situation, the version of her in your head right now is going to turn from a non-smoker into a smoker, because if she still thinks that you are a non-smoker after learning the fact that you just clearly told her that you're a smoker, then she's delusional, right? So the whole idea is that the attraction also works on the idea of mystery. Because you can say that, well, I can describe a beautiful image for you. I can even paint the beautiful image for you. But there will not be an image that is more beautiful than anything that you can imagine. Because our imagination is endless, right? If I were to just tell you about how ludicrous, how perfect this person that you're going to meet is going to be, the fantasies will run wild in your head. Right, this person the fantasies will bring you to the level of, because again, fantasies doesn't need to be grounded in reality. You'll come out with a version that is not even human, right? There's how perfect, it's gonna be a goddess, it's gonna be a god. But if you actually review who you actually are as a person, then you can say that, like, well, then you sort of lose that edge, right? Which is why there are sometimes, if you let fantasy run wild, which can be categorized by guys who refuse to talk to the girls that they like, and they just fantasize about, like, oh, how perfect this girl will be in a relationship with me, then you can say that the version of that girl in their head is so far from reality, right? But they just continue to fall in love with this girl, and then they put so much time and so much mental energy towards it, which is completely crazy to me. So if you want to use this principle advantageously in your pursuit of affection and relationship, then the whole idea is that continue to utilize your mirroring and sense of importance so that you reveal as little about yourself as possible. Of course, over time, you do need to slowly reveal who you actually are. Because one thing that I forgot to mention when it comes down to using mirroring and sense of importance is that if you truly want to bond with somebody, yes, at some point, you need to also get a certain amount of sense of importance. You need to talk about the things that is valuable to you, right? If let's say you're only using it hypothetically for a situation of like professional relationships, where it's colleagues, clients, etc., where we don't really need to know too much about ourselves, then yes, I can give all the sense of importance to you. But for me, myself, when I speak with my close friends, then of course I will also want a certain amount of satisfaction from the conversation. I will also talk about the things that I like. I also talk about my cruise trip, and then hopefully they will give me the attention to actually listen instead of deciding to change the topic or whatsoever, right? Just like how I give the respect to them. But most of the time, human beings, if I'm really in rapport with them, we are going to give each other the space to actually talk. And of course, if the person don't really return the attention to you, then, well, you'll know. So in any case, I will end off the topic today here. And you can say that today's topic, although yes, I still managed to talk for 35 minutes, it's more or less just on the core principle, right? So if I were to do a short summary of what we covered, is that we covered that human beings, we have 3 different faces. The face that we show the public, the face that we show our close family members, our close friends, and the face that we never show anybody. Which, now that I just mentioned this, I actually have like one final point, but I'll just touch and go at that point in the summary. So on top of that, in actual fact, what we're falling in love with, because what we fall in love with the other person is a one-dimensional idea of who they are, more or less is just their silhouette, their faces. What we tend to do in our head whenever we create this character of them in our head is that we imprint our ideal significant other into them. And because of this, then you can say that what we're actually falling in love with is the idea of them instead of who they are as a person. Which, by the way, if you want to know what is the list of things that you actually fall in love with, go back and notice the patterns of girls that you have been infatuated with, right? And vice versa, girls, like, go back and think of the pattern of guys that you are infatuated with. If you see a certain common factor, a common trait among them, such as like they are this build, they are this height, then you know that, yeah, that's my preference, right? My preference generally is going to be this build, this height, have this particular trait. So that's one way for you, if let's say you really want to find out, okay, what is my ideal type? Go back, reference about all the different people in the past that you have found to be attractive. Then you probably will find your answer more or less. Then moving forward is, if you're utilizing this for attraction, then what you want to do is still again go back to your sense of importance, your mirroring, because what you want to do is that you want to retain a certain amount of mystery, right? Because the more that they fill in the gaps for you is advantageous for you, because what they'll fill in the gaps with the information that they do not know about you are going to be things that they find in their ideal significant other. So you can say that there are few, if there are any at all, any traits that you can review that will triumph their ideal significant other's trait. It makes sense, right? You know, if let's say, for example, I'm a little bit crude, but this person likes the ideal significant other to be perfectly nice, then for me to show that I'm crude can be disadvantageous for me in a relationship. At least at the attraction stage, right? We're not talking in terms of like, okay, what if we actually get in a relationship? Because that is something along the line. Ideally, you speak to this person long enough, then you'll know a little bit more about yourself, and you'll know a little bit about the other person. So, and the final point that I would want to mention is that you can say that the fantasy of the person will always be better than the person itself. Regardless of how ideal of a person I am, I will never ever beat the fantasy of her, the version of me in her head, because the version of me in her head have access to her whole mind. So even if I'm extremely close with the girl, I can only see based on the face that she shows her peers and her friends, but the ideal significant other in her head is privy to the final face, which is the face that she only shows herself. So this is the funny thing, right? So you can say that in some sense, our illusion and our fantasies in our head will always be more perfect and closer and more genuine to a certain extent to anybody that we meet in real life. So that's just a final point that I want to end off with. Again, in any case, if there's any confusion when it comes down to this concept, there's anything you want to highlight or anything that you feel like, okay, Elon, maybe you haven't considered this, then do let me know. Then in any case, then I will see you in the next one where I'll probably touch on another topic. Alright, see you.